we'll be going over IRS Form 8300, Report of Cash Payments over $10,000 received in a trade or business. So, as a result of a federal law passed back in 1970 known as the Bank Secrecy Act, the federal law requires businesses to report large cash transactions greater than $10,000 to the IRS and the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, also known as FinCEN. Taxpayers generally do this by filing IRS Form 8300, which is the report of cash payments over $10,000 received in a trade or business. So before we go over the four parts to this tax form, what I'd like to do is maybe go over a couple of key concepts that are pretty pertinent to this form. So a new requirement is that as of January 1st, 2024, taxpayers who must already file information returns electronically must also e-file IRS Form 8300. You cannot submit this form via paper copy if you're already filing electronically other documents. And other documents meaning Form 1099s, W-2s, and currently the requirement is if you're filing 10 or more information returns in a tax year, then you should be filing those electronically unless you meet the criteria for some sort of a waiver or hardship exception. We'll put links to tax forms that discuss exceptions either due to religious concerns or undue hardships. We'll put links to those in the show notes. So basically, there are some exceptions, but the tax form is required when a person that's engaged in a trade or business that receives more than $10,000 in cash. This can be either in one transaction or in two or more related transactions on separate dates. So the requirement is to file this form no later than the 15th day after the day that the cash was received. So if that receipt of cash falls on a weekend, then it would be the next business day. So let's imagine that John Doe, who's making this report, received his last, received $10,000 on March 1st. So his reporting requirement would be by March 16th, but that falls on a weekend. So the next business day, let's call it March 17th, that's when he would, have to file it. And the requirement is that you have to file it if you've received multiple payments, then you must file it within 15 days of the payment that puts you over the $10,000 threshold. So for example, let's imagine we're reporting a transaction where someone has been paying $2,000 a month. So for months 1 through 4, this is not a reportable transaction. On month 5, this kicks this to a $10,000 threshold, and the threshold is $10,000 within a 12-month period. So it does not matter whether it's a calendar year or if it's into the next calendar year, but within a 12-month period. So on that 5th month where he received $2,000, he would then have to file this within 15 days. Now, the government does not require you to file Form 8300 under certain circumstances. So if the cash is received by a financial institution that's already required to file what's known as a FinCEN currency transaction report, if it's received by a casino that's already required to file this report as part of its gaming business. A side note, a casino does have to report cash payments over $10,000 if they're received in a manner not related to the gaming business. So if they also own a nightclub or a restaurant or a bar, and that's where the money came in, they would still have to report Form 8300. If it's received by an agent who receives the cash and then within 15 days participates in a second transaction that's already reportable. and then they disclose all that required information in that second transaction, then they don't have to file this first transaction. And again, the intention is that eventually the money gets reported in a timely manner. So that really is meant to avoid double paperwork. So if this were a vehicle sale and then the person turns around and sells this vehicle or buys another vehicle and that transaction's already been being reported, then you would not have to report the first transaction. If the transaction is outside the United States completely, or if the transaction is not in the course of this person's trade or business. So, and then before we get too far, this is about reporting cash payments. So the IRS has a definition of cash, and that is either U.S. and foreign currency and coin received in a transaction, or a cashier's check, money order, bank draft, or a traveler's check that has a face value of $10,000 or less that's received in a designated reporting transaction or received in a transaction where the recipient knows that this is being used to avoid a reportable transaction under the law. So in this example, John Doe is reporting what he believes to be a suspicious transaction. And so we're going to go ahead and start at the top with item 1. If you're amending a prior report, you would check this box, and then you would complete parts 1 through 4 as applicable with the amended return information. You don't need to file this with a copy of your old Form 8300. You just need to amend it. In this case, we're filing a suspicious transaction, so we're going to check box 1B. We're going to use the comments section to describe the suspicious nature, and then we're going to also, have a couple of options. You can report it to the local criminal investigation division office. You can report anything that may be of an urgent issue, like money laundering, terrorist activities. You can report things of that nature to your local law enforcement agency. So in the comments section, we're going to talk about that, but we'll just put okay, so you can kind of say something like that. So we're going to go over the 4 parts to this form. In part 1, we have the identity of the individual from whom you actually received the cash. Part 2 would be the person on whose behalf this was conducted. This may or may not be completed. Part 3 would be the actual description of the transaction and how it was paid. And then part 4 would be information about the business that receives the cash. So let's go ahead and start with part 1. So if there are multiple individuals, the first thing you'll do is check this box, and then you'll complete this information for the first individual. So in this case, we're reporting on Robert Smith, his taxpayer ID number, his address, his date of birth, and the IRS wants you to use the month, date, year format. So in this case, January 1st, 1950 looks like 01011950. City, state, and zip code. If this person's not in the United States, you would enter the name of the country. And in this case, occupation, he let it loose that he may be a narcotics distributor. So probably not the best use of judgment on his part. Maybe he just got finished watching the Griselda documentary on Netflix. So, and then you're required as the reporting official to obtain a copy to describe their ID. Like, you have to verify their taxpayer ID number, and you have to be able to verify that they had an ID that helps support it. So whether it's your whether it's a passport, driver's license. I mean, they gave you their tax ID number up here, but then you also have to verify their identity, that they are who they say they are. In this case, we used a passport issued by the United States government. We put the number in here, and John Doe is reporting this. There are certain penalties that can fall upon you if you don't report the tax ID number, or if you don't demonstrate what would be considered due diligence. So you have to at least be able to demonstrate that you tried on multiple occasions to get an accurate taxpayer ID number. And if you can't verify with reasonable cause, then the IRS can hold you responsible for civil penalties, monetary payments, or penalties, and the federal government can come after you for, if they believe that, this is bordering on criminal activity. So if you had more than one individual involved, then you can enter the second and subsequent information on Part 1 on page 2. These are identical fields right here to the fields that we just covered. If you're filing paper copies, you can just print off as many copies of this page 2 as you want for all the different Part 1s that you may need to complete. If you're filing electronically, as many people are required to do, I believe you're limited to up to 99 different parties. So you should have enough space to enter all the people that you receive the cash from. In Part 2, we're going to enter the information on whose behalf this transaction was conducted. So Robert Smith had come in and said, hey, this isn't I'm not buying this truck for me. I'm buying it for my wife, Mary, and, for her business. So we're going to put in Mary Smith. She's a sole proprietor, so she has her social security number, except can't be identical to Robert's, obviously. So, and then her sole proprietorship also has an employer ID number, which we'll enter here. She's doing business as Pharmaceutical Enterprises, and she is not a narcotics distributor. She's a consultant. So same address, city, state, and zip code. And, if you did not have to provide a tax ID number here, then you would document the type of documentation that you've verified this person's identity with. So in this case, Mary has a passport issued by Colombia. We put the passport down, the passport number, and that covers John Doe. And again, if we check this more than, there's more than one, you can do this for as many times as you want, for as many people as required, up to 99 if you're filing electronically. So in Part 3, we're going to go over the actual transaction. In item 28, we're going to enter the date that you received the cash, again in the month, date, year order. We're also going to note that this should be the date where you receive the cash payment that puts you over the $10,000 limit. So if this was multiple payments, and we go back to that $10,000 or $10,000, $2,000 a month example, this would be the fifth monthly payment. So you would enter that. You would enter the total amount of cash received. In this case, John Doe received $15,000, but it was not in more than one payment, so he doesn't check the box in item 30. And if for some reason there is a different price that, let's say that he initially sold it for $14,000, and then Robert said, well, my money's late, so I'm just going to give you an extra $15,000 just to, wink, wink, nod, nod. Please don't tell anyone. So John Doe is going to go ahead and do his rightful duty as a taxpayer and kind of report the difference. So if you receive this in U.S. currency, you could report it all at the top right here, right? So if this was in dollars, if it was in $100 bills or higher, then you would report separately how much money you received in $100 or higher denominations. If this were foreign currency, let's say that you receive $15,000 in euros, what you would have to do is convert the currency into dollars using an exchange rate that would be appropriate to the market. So let's just say that that was based on the current exchange rates of the day. And then you would put the country or the type of currency to the right. If this were cashier's checks or money orders or traveler's checks or something a little bit more fungible than that, let's just say that it was a cashier's check, then you would enter the issuer's name, in this case, Cashier Checks USA, as well as the serial number of the instrument here. In item 33, we're going to report the type of transaction. So in this case, this was personal property that was purchased because John Doe is selling a 2010 Dodge Ram pickup truck. This could be a real estate deal if it was reported on 1099-S. This could be personal services or business services provided. If you bought intangible property like, I don't know, book rights, or if this was a part of a non-compete agreement or something that just you can't, that's not tangible property, then you would check that. If this was a payment of debt, like for example, let's just say that Robert Smith was, owed some money to some people that he doesn't want to owe money into, so he decides to pay off the debt. This could be a cash exchange. You could report it under item G if you're just laundering money or, at least exchanging currency maybe. If you had money in escrow or putting it into a trust fund, you would select that category. Bail received by court clerks. So court clerks are required to file this every time someone posts bail greater than $10,000. So in this case, a court clerk would check this, and then this could also be a court clerk's office, the department, or whatever entity is authorized to receive money on behalf of the court for bail. So if you are not a court clerk, but you happen to be a bail bondsman, then you would actually report this as business services provided under item D. So court clerks are required to file this form if it's more than $10,000 for an individual or individuals charged with a specified criminal offense. So both the dollar threshold and the specified criminal offense criteria has to be met. To be a specified criminal offense, the IRS says it has to be either a federal offense involving a controlled substance, racketeering, or money laundering. Or it can be a state criminal offense that's substantially similar to one of those offenses. So in this case, he's reporting the sale of personal property because he sold a pickup truck. And then in part 4, we're going to enter information about the business that received the cash. So John Doe operates a sole proprietorship known as Doe Enterprises. He is going to enter both his employer ID number, because he has one, and his social security number. If he didn't have an EIN, then he would just enter his social security number. And if he was running a business and not a sole proprietorship, like if it was a separate business entity, then he would only enter the employer ID number. So he'll put his address with the city, state, and zip code, as well as the nature of his business. So the IRS really wants people to avoid using overly general terms such as self-employed or business owner, especially up here in the occupation, profession, or business field. They would rather you be very specific, like you're a plumber, you're an attorney. If you're retired, you can put retired attorney, you can put retired plumber, or unemployed plumber if you're in between jobs. For electronic filers, I believe both blocks 13 and 22 have a limit of 25 characters. I don't know if that limitation holds in item 41. It looks like it could have more space available. So John Doe will sign item 42 again, declaring under penalty of perjury that this is information to the best of his knowledge. He's going to date it, and then he's going to type in his name and enter his contact telephone information. So there's a little bit more detail about reporting, certain transactions, about exempt, who may be exempt, and you can find all of that information in our article, which is on our website. Simply go to teachmepersonalfinance.com, type in IRS Form 8300, and you should see our article appear. If you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our channel. If you have any topics that you would like covered in an upcoming video, please hit me up in the comments. We'll be sure to include links to resources that we've produced on any tax forms mentioned either here or in the article. We'll put them in our show notes. So that's all we have for our video. Thank you very much and have a great day.